I had been sitting alone at my boss's wedding for maybe 12 minutes when a woman in a dark green dress crossed the reception hall, slipped into the empty chair beside me, and leaned close enough that I caught the faint scent of orange blossom in her hair. "My sister says you're very good at leaving before anyone notices," she whispered. "She made me promise I wouldn't let you." I turned toward her, confused, and she smiled like she had been waiting all evening to see exactly that expression. That was how I met Emma Monroe, my boss's younger sister, and how a wedding I had planned to escape before dessert became the night that changed what I thought I wanted from the rest of my life. If you enjoy slow-burn stories about second chances, difficult choices, and the courage to say what you really want, stay with me. And tell me in the comments, would you trust a romance that began at your boss's wedding? My name is Luke Harrison. I was 30 years old, living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and working as a procurement manager for Alder Creek Medical Systems. My boss, Rebecca Monroe, was our vice president of operations, which meant she was the person who approved my budget, reviewed my performance, and could identify a bad spreadsheet from across a conference room. I had worked for her for 5 years. She was sharp, fair, and allergic to excuses. I was also single, something Rebecca knew only because she had once asked whether my emergency contact information was still correct. My last serious relationship had ended almost 2 years earlier, and I had grown comfortable with a life that ran on routines. Work, gym, Saturday groceries, Sunday dinner with my younger sister and her family. Nothing dramatic, nothing uncertain, nothing that could ask more from me than I had decided in advance to give. Rebecca's wedding took place at a mountain lodge outside Boone, where the Blue Ridge ridges faded into one another beneath a warm September sunset. Half my department had come with spouses. The other half had found each other before the ceremony and formed a loud table near the dance floor. I had chosen a smaller table near the French doors, close to the terrace, and, more importantly, the exit. I had congratulated Rebecca and her new husband, Daniel, eaten dinner, and checked my watch twice when Emma appeared. "You realize," I said, "that your sister is on her honeymoon starting tomorrow. Her authority over my social life should have expired with the ceremony." Emma glanced toward the head table. "You don't know Rebecca very well if you think marriage reduces her authority. I know her extremely well. That's why I'm concerned." She laughed, and I noticed 2 things at once. First, she was beautiful in a way that did not seem designed to attract attention. Dark hair pinned loosely at the back of her neck, expressive brown eyes, almost no jewelry except a thin gold bracelet. Second, she seemed completely comfortable sitting beside a stranger. "I'm Emma," she said. I figured. "That sounded less charming than you probably meant it. I know your sister has one younger sister. You have her eyes. Better recovery." She lifted her champagne. "And you're Luke Harrison. Procurement, 30, gray Subaru. My sister talks about you." I stared at her. "Not constantly," she added. "Mostly when she's explaining why you're the one person who never panics when everyone else does. That sounds less invasive, does it?" "Not really." Emma smiled, but she did not push. That surprised me. Most people who said something that personal wanted to watch the reaction. She simply turned her chair slightly so we faced the room together. "For the record," she said, "she did not send me over to interrogate you. She told me you'd probably leave early because you hate being the only person at a table. I thought that sounded lonely. It's efficient." "Of course it is. Is that bad?" "No, just predictable." A server passed with small plates of cake. Emma took 2 and handed me one without asking. "I already had dessert," I said. "That is obviously not true." "How do you know?" "Because the cake was cut 6 minutes ago, and you've been staring at the exit for at least 10. I looked at the slice in my hand. Lemon cake with blackberry filling. You monitor strangers at weddings? Only suspicious ones. Should I be worried? Probably. I laughed before I could stop myself. That was the first problem. The second was that I stopped checking the time. For the next half hour, Emma told me enough about herself to make me forget I had planned to leave. She was 26, exactly 4 years younger than me, and had moved back to Raleigh 3 months earlier after 6 years in Seattle. She was a pediatric occupational therapist by training, but she had left her hospital position to build something called Bright Path Barn on a piece of property her grandparents had owned outside the city. A barn? I asked. A therapeutic riding program. For children? Mostly. Some teenagers, eventually adults, if we can build the staff. We? Right now, we is me. 1 certified instructor, 2 retired horses, 1 very opinionated pony, and my father pretending he does not enjoy fixing fences. That sounds underfunded. She pointed her fork at me. Procurement brain. Turn it off. I was asking as a person. You asked like a spreadsheet. Occupational hazard. She smiled. We have a small grant and private donations. I'm not trying to build a giant organization. I want a place where families who have spent years moving between clinics and waiting rooms can come outside and breathe. The way she said it changed her whole face. The teasing disappeared. In its place was something steady and deeply considered. I understood then that the barn was not a hobby she had invented after moving home. It was the reason she had moved home. Before I could ask more, Rebecca's mother appeared to remind Emma about a family picture, and to mention that an aunt had brought a very eligible dentist for her to meet. Emma waited until her mother left, then leaned toward me. Do you want to help me commit a small family crime? What kind? Walk to the terrace with me so Aunt Caroline thinks I'm occupied. I come from a less polite family. That barely qualifies. Then consider it cultural exchange. I stood and followed her. The night air outside was cooler. String lights ran along the stone railing. Below us, the lodge lawn sloped toward dark trees, and beyond them the mountains were only shapes against the last color in the sky. Emma rested both hands on the railing. Thank you, she said. For helping you avoid a dentist? For not asking why my family is trying to introduce me to one? I leaned against the railing beside her. I assumed there was a story. There is. You don't owe it to me. She glanced over. Rebecca was right about that part. What part? You don't make people explain themselves just because you're curious. I'm extremely curious, I can tell. I'm also employable. That made her laugh again. We stood quietly for a minute. I could hear music through the doors behind us, and the low noise of conversations inside. Then Emma said, I was engaged. I turned slightly, but she kept looking out at the dark hills. His name was David. We were together for 3 years. He got an offer in Phoenix last winter and assumed I would move with him. Not asked. Assumed. That sounds like an important distinction. It became one. She rubbed her thumb along the gold bracelet at her wrist. I had already been talking about coming home and starting Bright Path. He thought it was something I would get over. A sentimental phase. He said we could revisit it after we were married. What did you say? That if I needed his permission to revisit my own life, we had a bigger problem than Phoenix. I smiled despite myself. How did that go? Poorly. I'm sorry. I'm not. I was for a while. But now I'm mostly embarrassed I spent so long believing compromise meant one person kept shrinking until the other person felt comfortable. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only clarity earned the difficult way. I looked toward the reception hall, where her sister was dancing with her husband. Does your family know the whole story? Enough of it. Which is why Aunt Caroline thinks the answer is a nice dentist. That seems medically adjacent, at least. Emma laughed so suddenly she had to cover her mouth. When she lowered her hand, her eyes stayed on mine. You know, she said, I came over because my sister asked me not to let you disappear. I thought I'd talk to you for 5 minutes. And now? Now I'm trying to decide whether leaving you alone at that table was actually the safer option. The air shifted between us. Before I could answer, the terrace door opened, and Rebecca stepped outside in her wedding dress. She looked from Emma to me with the expression she used when a meeting had gone off agenda. I sent you to keep him from leaving early, she told Emma. I did not expect a private summit. I'm being hospitable, Emma said. Rebecca pointed at me. Luke, I am off duty. I'm happy for you. Emma laughed. Rebecca shook her head, kissed her sister's cheek, and disappeared inside. Well, I said, I'm resigning Monday. You won't. No. You like her. She's a good boss. Emma smiled. And you are very loyal. I did not know why the observation made me feel exposed. She saved me by changing the subject. Do you have your phone? Yes. Good. Give it to me. That sentence usually ends badly. Procurement people are so suspicious. I handed it over. She entered her number, then returned the phone. The new contact read, Emma Monroe, do not let leave early. I looked at her. That seems controlling. It's quality assurance. I laughed. She stepped toward the door, then turned back. For the record, I'm not asking you out tonight. I'm relieved. You shouldn't be. I'm giving you until tomorrow. Then she walked inside. I stayed at the wedding until the lights came on. The next morning, I stared at Emma's contact in my phone for 10 full minutes before sending anything. I wrote 3 versions, deleted all 3, then finally typed. I made it to breakfast without leaving early. Your supervision was effective. Her answer came almost immediately. Emma, I knew you could do hard things. Me, coffee this week? Emma, better, Saturday morning. Wear shoes that can get dirty. Me, that sounds less like a date and more like unpaid labor. Emma, I would never exploit a procurement manager before the second date. I smiled at my phone like an idiot. Saturday morning, I drove 40 minutes east of Raleigh to the Monroe family property, expecting a polished horse facility. Bright path. Barn was not polished. The main barn had been painted recently, but the side fence leaned in 2 places. The gravel parking area was half mud, and a faded red tractor sat beside a stack of lumber. 2 horses grazed in a paddock beyond the barn. A small gray pony watched my car arrive with the distrust of a tax auditor. Emma came out wearing jeans, work boots, and a navy sweatshirt with her hair in a ponytail. You came, she said. You sound surprised. Not surprised. Satisfied. That is worse. She handed me coffee, then noticed the small toolkit in my hand. I said, dirty shoes, not emergency equipment. I like being prepared. Put it back in the car. I did. The fact that she looked pleased mattered more than it should have. Emma spent the next hour showing me the barn. Bright Path was small, but it was thoughtful. There was a mounting ramp wide enough for wheelchairs, a quiet room with soft lighting for children who became overwhelmed, a tack wall labeled with simple picture symbols, and an outdoor ring bordered by fresh posts. A 7-year-old boy named Miles arrived with his mother for a trial session. He was wary of the helmet and barely spoke, so Emma sat near the gray pony, Pickles, and talked to the animal instead of pressuring him. Pickles tried to chew her sleeve. Miles laughed. 10 minutes later, he touched the helmet. 20 minutes later, he was riding slowly around the ring with Emma beside him. When the session ended, his mother hugged her. Watching Emma, I understood why she had crossed the country and ended an engagement for this place. She found me standing by the fence. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm revising an assumption. About the mud? About you." Her eyebrows lifted. "I thought you were brave because you ended an engagement and moved across the country," I said. That was probably true, but this is the braver part. She looked toward the barn. Building it? Building something that might fail. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "That is either very sweet or very rude. I can try again." "No, don't." She smiled. "I know what you mean. We ate lunch on the tailgate of her father's truck. Her parents were away visiting relatives, so it was just us. 2 sandwiches, 1 bag of chips, and Pickles staring through the fence as if he had paid for half." Emma told me the barn had enough funding for 9 months. After that, she needed a county partnership, private donors, or both. My first instinct was to ask for her budget. I swallowed it. She noticed. "You just stopped yourself from offering to fix something. I'm growing, slowly. I have known you for 6 days, and already I'm changing lives." I laughed. Then she said, "Why are you really single, Luke?" The question was so direct, I almost respected it more than I disliked it. "I could ask you the same thing. I told you about David. That explains the last 6 months, not your entire personality." "Fair." She took a sip of coffee. "Your turn." I looked across the paddock. My parents married 3 times between them after they divorced each other. Emma blinked. That is mathematically exhausting. It was also emotionally exhausting. She waited. When I was a kid, every new relationship came with promises. New family, fresh start. This time is different. Then, 6 months later, everyone was packing boxes. By the time I was 20, I had decided people should stop promising forever when they could barely promise until Christmas. "And your last relationship?" Her name was Claire. Not my boss. Different Claire. Thank goodness. I smiled. "We were together almost 3 years. She wanted to get married. I kept saying we were good the way we were. She finally told me that I treated commitment like a legal liability. Was she wrong?" "No." Emma's expression softened. "What happened?" "She left, married someone else last spring." "Did that hurt?" "Yes." "Did you love her?" "I think I did. I also think I liked that she kept asking for more because it meant I never had to be the one asking." Emma looked down at her hands. "That is a dangerous habit." "I know." She met my eyes again. "Are you going to make me ask for everything?" The question was quiet, almost light, but I heard what was underneath it. So I put my sandwich down. "No." Then I leaned across the small space between us and kissed her. It was not dramatic, no music, no perfect sunset. My hand was dusty from the fence, and she was holding a potato chip. But when she kissed me back, I felt something inside me shift from caution to decision. When we separated, Emma looked at the chip still in her hand. "That was terrible timing. I can do it again." "You should." So I did. Dating my boss's sister turned out to be both simpler and more complicated than I expected. The simple part was Emma. She did not play games. If she wanted dinner, she asked. If she was angry, she said why. If she needed a quiet evening, she did not invent an excuse. She sent me pictures of Pickles attempting crimes. She came to my apartment on Wednesdays because that was the night I cooked too much pasta. She met my sister, Rachel, and within an hour, the two of them were discussing my childhood in ways I considered defamatory. The complicated part was everything around us. 3 weeks after the wedding, I told Rebecca that Emma and I were dating. She leaned back in her chair. As your boss, I care only about conflicts. There aren't any if you keep company resources out of Bright Path, and I stay out of decisions about your employment. Agreed. As her sister, I have one question. Are you serious? The safe answer would have been that it was early. Instead, I said, yes. Rebecca studied me, then nodded. Good. Then don't become cautious just because I'm in the room. What does that mean? You treat uncertainty like a problem that needs more data. Emma is not data. I'm aware. Excellent. Then we never need to have this conversation again. She almost kept that promise. For the next 2 months, Emma and I built a relationship around ordinary things. That was new for me. I had always thought romance was measured by large decisions because large decisions were the part that frightened me. Emma taught me that intimacy usually arrived disguised as smaller choices. She kept a phone charger at my apartment. I learned which grocery store carried the tea she liked. She knew I became quiet when I was stressed and stopped asking, "What's wrong?" every 5 minutes. Instead, she would say, "Do you want company or solutions?" Most of the time, I chose company. I began spending Sunday mornings at Bright Path, not as a consultant, and not because the barn needed me. Sometimes I painted a fence or carried feed. Sometimes I sat on an overturned bucket and watched Emma work. The program grew slowly. A local physical therapy clinic referred 2 families. A church donated helmets. A retired teacher volunteered at the check-in desk. Emma secured a small county recreation grant that covered insurance and instructor hours through the spring. One cold Saturday in November, Bright Path held a family open house. I arrived early and found Emma staring at rows of folding chairs as if they had personally disappointed her. "What are you afraid of?" I asked. "That no one comes?" "People RSVP'd." "I know. I keep hearing David call this a sentimental project that wouldn't survive reality." I stood beside her. "I can't promise Bright Path survives 5 years, but it is real today. Families are driving here because what you built matters today." Her eyes filled. "Please don't cry," I said. "I'm not trained for that." She laughed and hugged me. By noon, every chair was full. Miles rode Pickles in front of the families, more confident than the child I had first met. On the drive home, Emma told me his mother had said he volunteered to speak in class for the first time all year. "It isn't only because of the barn," Emma said quickly. "His parents, teachers, therapists, everyone matters." "I know." She took my hand. "But this mattered too." "Yes," I said. It did. The first real crack between us came in December. It began with an email Emma almost did not tell me about. We were eating takeout at my apartment when she placed her fork down and said, "I got a job offer." I looked up. "Where?" "Seattle." The word hit with more force than I expected. She watched my face carefully. "A pediatric rehab center I worked with before I moved. Their program director is leaving. They want me to take over. That sounds significant." "It is." "What happens to Bright Path?" "I don't know." I sat back. Every instinct I had told me to gather information: salary, timeline, contract, housing, benefits, career path. So that was what I did. When do they need an answer? 3 weeks. Would you have to move permanently? Yes. Could Bright Path operate with someone else? Maybe. Do you want the job? Emma looked at me for a long time. I don't know. I nodded slowly. It sounds like you should seriously consider it. Something in her face closed. I noticed, but I misunderstood why. I mean, it is a major leadership role. I continued. And you loved the work there. I did. You would be good at it. Probably. And Bright Path is still fragile. You could decide. Luke. I stopped. She folded her hands in her lap. Do you want me to go? The question terrified me because I knew the wrong answer and could not find the right one fast enough. I want you to do what is best for you. Her eyes dropped. That is not what I asked. I know, but I don't want my feelings to pressure you. I did not ask you to pressure me. What are you asking? I'm asking whether I matter in your version of the future. You do. Then say something that sounds like it. I stood and took our plates to the kitchen even though neither was finished. Emma watched me. That, she said quietly, is exactly what you do. What? You turn emotion into a task. I'm trying not to make your decision about me, and I'm trying to understand whether there is an us to include in the decision. There is. Then why are you acting like a career counselor? I turned around. Because David tried to decide your life for you. You told me that was why you left. Her expression sharpened. David told me what I wanted before I got to say it. You are refusing to tell me what you want at all. Those are different problems. I opened my mouth, then closed it. She stood. I don't need you to tell me to stay. I don't need some dramatic speech about how you can't live without me. I need you to be honest enough to let your feelings inconvenience the conversation. I looked at her. The answer was in me. I wanted her to stay. I wanted Sunday mornings at the barn and Wednesday pasta and her charger by my bed. I wanted to know what happened after 6 months, after a year, after the point where my old instincts usually started searching for exits. But saying that felt like making a promise. And promises still scared me. So I said, I don't want to be the reason you give up an opportunity. Emma's eyes filled, but she did not cry. No, she said. You'd rather be no reason at all. Then she picked up her coat and left. I did not hear from her the next day, or the day after that. I told myself she needed space. By the third day, I knew I was lying. I was hiding. On Monday morning, Rebecca came into my office carrying a folder. She set it on my desk, looked at me and said, "What did you do?" I blinked. "Good morning to you too." Emma has ignored 2 family group texts and told our mother she is fine, which means she is absolutely not fine. That could be unrelated to me. Rebecca stared. Fine, I said. It's related to me. She closed the door. I told her about Seattle. Rebecca sat down slowly. She told you? Yes. She hasn't told me. That surprised me. She said she wasn't sure what she wanted. Rebecca nodded. So what did you say? I told her to consider the opportunity. My boss closed her eyes. What? I asked. Nothing. That was a very loud nothing. She opened her eyes again. Did she ask whether you wanted her to go? I did not answer. Rebecca leaned back. Luke. I didn't want to pressure her. My sister is not a procurement decision. I know that. Do you? I felt my patience tighten. This is exactly why I was worried about dating your sister. I cannot have my boss evaluating my relationship in my office. Rebecca's expression changed immediately. You're right. The answer stopped me. She stood. You're completely right. I crossed a line. I rubbed a hand over my face. I'm sorry. No, you were right to say it. She picked up the folder. As your boss, this conversation is over. She reached the door, then paused. As someone who happens to know both of you, can I say one thing that is not an instruction? I nodded. Rebecca turned back. Emma spent 3 years with a man who believed love meant she should fit inside his plan. She does not want another plan. She wants a partner willing to have a preference and still respect hers. I looked down at the desk. Rebecca continued softly. And you spent half your life watching adults make promises they couldn't keep. So now you think honesty means promising nothing until you are certain. But Luke, certainty is not the same thing as integrity. That sentence stayed with me after she left. I worked badly for the rest of the day. At 5:30, I shut my laptop and drove to Bright Path. Emma's car was there, but the barn doors were closed. I found her in the tack room, sitting on a wooden bench with a stack of grant paperwork beside her. She looked up when I entered. Rebecca told you where I was? No. I know where you are on Mondays. Her expression softened for half a second, then guarded itself again. I'm working. I know. I don't want to fight. Neither do I. I stayed near the doorway. I came to apologize. She waited. I answered the wrong question because the right one scared me. Emma looked at the papers in her lap. That is at least accurate. I thought if I told you I wanted you to stay, I would be doing what David did. You would not. I know that now. She looked up. Do you? Yes. Because wanting something from you is not the same as demanding it. The room went quiet. I stepped closer. I want you to stay. Her eyes filled. I forced myself to keep going. I want you to stay because I love the life we are building. I love waking up and seeing that you sent me a picture of a criminal pony at 6 in the morning. I love that my sister asks when you're coming to dinner before she asks whether I am. I love sitting in this barn even when I am not useful. I love you. Emma stared at me. The words felt terrifying and clean. I had not planned them. That made them better. But, I said, if you decide Seattle is the right choice, I am not going to punish you for it. I will be sad. I will hate the distance. I will probably make spreadsheets about airfare. But I will not make you smaller so I can feel secure. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away impatiently. You love me? Yes. You chose a strange place to say that? I panicked. That made her laugh through the tears. I moved closer, but I did not touch her until she reached for my hand. I love you too, she said. My chest tightened. Then she added, and I still don't know what I'm doing about Seattle. I know. Can you live with that? I'm learning. For the next 2 weeks, we did something I had never done well before. We talked without trying to win. Emma met with the Seattle hospital director and asked harder questions. She reviewed the position honestly. The salary was excellent. The program was established. The leadership role was real. She would have resources, a larger staff, and the chance to influence hundreds of children each year. At the same time, Bright Path received an invitation to apply for a 2-year county partnership that would stabilize much of its operating budget. The application was competitive. Winning was not guaranteed. I did not tell Emma what to choose. But I stopped pretending I had no preference. When she asked whether I could imagine moving to Seattle someday, I said yes, but not immediately. My sister and niece were in Raleigh. My job was there. I would need time. When she asked whether I could imagine building a future beside Bright Path, I said yes to that too. We discussed distance, money, career changes, what marriage meant to each of us, children, family obligations. The conversations were not romantic in the usual sense. They were better. They were real. One night, Emma sat cross-legged on my sofa with her laptop open and said, "You know what is strange?" "What?" "You are better at commitment when you stop trying to predict the outcome." "That sounds impossible." "It is not. I work in procurement. Outcomes are the point." She closed the laptop. People are not contracts. I have heard that before. From me? From several people, apparently. She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. The deadline for Seattle arrived 3 days before Christmas. Emma asked me to meet her at Bright Path after work. I drove there in the dark, convinced I was about to hear something that would divide my life into before and after. She stood in the center aisle of the barn, wearing a red knit hat and holding an envelope. "Well?" I asked. She handed me the envelope. It was not from Seattle. It was from the county. Bright Path had been selected for the 2-year partnership. I looked up. "You got it. We got it. You got it." She laughed. "Fine. I got it." "And Seattle? I turned it down this morning." My relief was immediate, but I forced myself to ask the question that mattered. "Because of us?" "Partly." I waited. Emma came closer. "Because of me first," she said. That mattered. I needed to know I wasn't staying just because I was afraid of losing you. I nodded. And I realized the Seattle job was the safer choice. Bigger institution, better salary, clear career ladder. Bright Path is the risky one. You chose risk? I chose the life I actually want. She touched my coat near the collar. You happen to be in it? I'm honored. You should be. I kissed her beneath the barn lights while Pickles kicked a bucket somewhere behind us. It was extremely on brand. By spring, Bright Path looked different. The county money helped Emma hire a second certified instructor. A local contractor donated labor to repair the old side fence. A parent fundraising committee formed without Emma having to beg anyone. Miles continued riding and had started greeting new families when they arrived. I kept my promise to stay out of the program's finances unless Emma specifically asked me for a personal opinion. That was harder than it sounds. At work, Rebecca and I established one simple rule. She never discussed my relationship with Emma during work hours unless there was a genuine emergency, and I never used her as a messenger when Emma and I disagreed. It worked, mostly. Once, during a quarterly review, Rebecca looked at the new watch Emma had given me for my birthday and said, "Nice watch." I said, "Professional boundaries." She laughed for 5 minutes. Emma and I had been together 8 months when Rebecca hosted a small anniversary dinner at the same mountain lodge where she had married. The guest list was smaller this time. Family, a few close friends, and 3 people from work. When we entered the reception room, Emma immediately pointed toward the little table beside the French doors. "My old table." "Look," she said, "your natural habitat." "I have evolved." "Have you?" "Yes." "Prove it." She walked over, pulled out the chair I had occupied alone on her sister's wedding night, and sat down. Then she patted the chair beside her. I joined her. For a while, we watched people arrive. The mountains outside were green now instead of September blue. The room was quieter than the wedding had been, but the memory of that night sat between us like a familiar song. Emma leaned close. "Do you remember what I whispered to you?" "Unfortunately. My sister says you're very good at leaving before anyone notices. And then you threatened me with supervision. I saved you from an early bedtime. You changed my life through aggressive hospitality." She laughed. Then her expression softened. "I almost didn't come over." "That surprised me. Why?" "Because you looked so self-contained. I thought maybe you wanted to be alone." "I did." She raised an eyebrow. "I thought I did," I corrected. "What changed?" I looked around the room, at Rebecca greeting guests, at Daniel carrying wine toward the table, at Emma beside me, her hand resting close enough that our fingers touched. You asked me to want something out loud. That came later. No. It started that night. You asked me to stay. Emma smiled. And you did. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers through hers. For years, I thought the safest way to live was to never need anyone badly enough that losing them could rearrange me. I confused restraint with strength. I confused having no expectations with being easy to love. Emma did not fix that in me. She did something harder. She refused to accept it as wisdom. She taught me that saying what I wanted did not give me the right to control the answer. It simply gave the other person the chance to know me honestly. That night, at Rebecca's anniversary dinner, I reached into my jacket pocket. Emma noticed immediately. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing? Something inefficient." "That sounds dangerous." I pulled out a small velvet box. For once, Emma Monroe had no joke ready. I did not kneel, not because I had planned some modern statement about tradition, but because we were sitting at the same table where she had first chosen to sit beside me, and standing up would have felt like leaving the moment. I opened the box. Inside was a simple ring with a small oval diamond and a thin gold band. Emma covered her mouth. I took a breath. "I am not promising you that nothing will change," I said. "Things will change. Jobs, cities, families, plans. We will disagree. We will get scared. We will probably own more horses than I consider financially responsible." A laugh escaped through her tears. I continued. "But I can promise that I will keep choosing the conversation instead of the exit. I will tell you what I want. I will listen when you tell me what you want. And when we do not know what comes next, I will stay long enough to find out with you." My hands were shaking. "Emma, will you marry me?" She looked at me for one long second. Then she leaned close, exactly the way she had the first night we met. And she whispered, "You're not leaving early this time either." Then she kissed me. I laughed against her mouth. "Is that a yes?" "Yes, Luke." "Obviously, yes." Rebecca saw the ring 2 minutes later and shouted loud enough for the entire room to turn. Emma buried her face against my shoulder. "So much for private," I said. "You proposed at my sister's anniversary dinner?" "Fair point." Rebecca hugged Emma, then me. When she pulled back, she looked at me with the same expression she used after a successful year-end audit. "I knew inviting you to my wedding was a good decision." I pointed at her. "Do not take credit for this." Emma lifted her hand to admire the ring. "She absolutely will." She was right. 6 months later, we got married at Bright Path Barn. Not because we wanted a rustic wedding trend, because it was the place where Emma had chosen her own life, and the place where I had finally learned to choose mine. Miles carried the rings with the seriousness of a diplomat. Pickles was banned from the ceremony after attempting to eat the floral arrangement during rehearsal. Rebecca cried before anyone else and denied it afterward. At the reception, there was one small table near the barn doors. Emma had placed a handwritten card on it. "Reserved for people who plan to leave early." I told her that technically counted as wedding text and was emotionally manipulative. She said it was tradition. I never sat there. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more emotional romance stories. And tell me in the comments, when love asks you to be honest about what you want, is it braver to protect yourself or to let someone know they have the power to matter?